Black woman treated like a criminal at bank. Moments later, she fires the entire management team. It was a chilly Wednesday morning when she walked into Trinity National's downtown branch. She didn't dress to impress, nor did she need to. Celeste Morgan wore a navy wool coat, comfortable flats, and carried a well-loved leather handbag. Her natural hair was neatly pulled back, her face bare of makeup, and her posture straight, calm, unreadable. To the staff behind the gleaming counter, she looked ordinary, perhaps even invisible. Just another customer. But Celeste wasn't there for an ordinary transaction. She approached the front desk and quietly requested to withdraw $120,000 from her business account. The request landed like a dropped glass, drawing quick glances, raised eyebrows, and subtle whispers. The teller, a young woman named Kelsey, blinked. Her practiced smile faltered. "That's a substantial amount," she said, eyes scanning Celeste's modest outfit with unease. Celeste nodded. "Yes, it is, but well within my account's daily limit." Kelsey didn't respond right away. Instead, she motioned to a nearby colleague. Moments later, 3 more staff members subtly surrounded the area, pretending to organize papers, shuffle cash, or check the printer. But their presence was deliberate, and their eyes watchful. Behind the glass walls of the office, the branch manager, Ryan McCall, watched with narrowed eyes. A quick whisper from a teller was all it took for him to step forward. Tall, suited, and self-assured. Ryan approached Celeste with the cool confidence of someone who rarely got challenged. "Ma'am," he began, his tone tinged with paternal condescension. "For amounts this large, we typically need additional verification, unless you're a private client." "I am," Celeste replied, offering her ID and bank card. Still, Ryan hesitated. His gaze lingered too long. "You understand, we have protocols, money laundering, fraud prevention. We have to be careful with these types of requests." Celeste inhaled slowly. She felt it, the weight of the room, the silent judgment, the growing discomfort of those watching. She'd been here before, many times, in different forms. The subtle way her skin color turned her into a suspect, the way her calm confidence unsettled those who expected fragility or fear. But she stood still, calm, resolute. In the background, 2 junior employees snickered quietly. One of them, Sophie, whispered, "She probably stumbled into some inheritance." Celeste heard it and ignored it, because she knew something they didn't. In less than 7 minutes, their world would change. They didn't know who she really was. They didn't know that the woman standing before them, quiet, unassuming, and utterly composed, was their CEO. The woman whose signature sat on every employee contract. And soon, she would remind them, not with rage, not with shouting, but with a phone call and the truth. Celeste Morgan had always known how to read a room. And this room, the polished marble lobby of Trinity National's flagship branch, wasn't hard to read at all. There was the silence that followed her every move, the way the front desk staff stiffened when she approached, the forced politeness in Kelsey's voice, the lingering eyes of customers and employees alike, all betraying the same silent suspicion. She doesn't belong here. It wasn't loud. No one said the word black. No one had to. The judgments floated through looks, murmurs, posture. It was a polished kind of prejudice wrapped in corporate smiles and standard protocols. Celeste sat quietly in the waiting area after the initial interaction. She was told they were verifying some things, nothing specific, no clear timeline, just ambiguity, delivered with a smile. While she waited, she watched. A white man in a tailored charcoal suit walked in, nodding to the security guard. Before he even spoke, a teller greeted him by name and led him directly to a private office. No questions, no delay. Moments later, a young Latina woman approached the counter to deposit a small business check. The teller, now less cheerful, scrutinized her ID like it had been forged. The woman's shoulders dropped slightly as she answered redundant questions, her voice growing quieter with each one. Then, a black teenager in a school uniform asked to withdraw $300. The teller, Kelsey, again asked if he was sure he had enough in the account. He nodded, awkwardly. She raised an eyebrow, made a call, and finally handed over the cash without a word. And so it went, like a rhythm only some people could hear. Smile, suspicion, smile, suspicion. By the time Celeste was called again, nearly 37 minutes had passed. 3 white customers who came in after her had already been served and left. She stood with quiet grace, collected her handbag, and returned to the counter. Kelsey looked tense. Her eyes flicked to the floor, then back up. "I'll need to involve our senior teller," she mumbled. It's a large amount." "You've had the documents for over half an hour," Celeste replied calmly. "What is the delay exactly?" Before Kelsey could answer, Ryan McCall stepped in again, this time standing squarely beside her. His voice was louder now, performative, meant to be overheard. "We've had some unusual activity lately," he said, narrowing his eyes at Celeste's ID. "Large cash withdrawals, suspicious account behavior. You understand, we have to be cautious." "Are you implying that I'm suspicious?" she asked, her tone level but pointed. "No one said that," Ryan replied, hands raised, mock innocence in his eyes. "But we can't just hand out 6-figure sums to anyone walking in off the street." Celeste felt a rush of heat rise to her neck, but she didn't flinch, didn't raise her voice. "I didn't walk in off the street," she said. "I'm an account holder, a client, and my withdrawal is within limits." Ryan sighed theatrically. "Well, we'll still need to verify that the funds are actually yours." Behind him, Sophie, the floor supervisor, joined them, her arms crossed tightly, lips pursed. "Perhaps you can tell us what you need the money for," she asked. It wasn't a question, it was a challenge. Celeste looked at her, unblinking. "And how many white clients this morning have you asked that question?" Sophie's smile faltered. "We ask everyone," she said quickly. A lie, one easily disproven, and she knew it. A pause hung between them, just long enough for the lobby to go still again, just long enough for the humiliation to settle into Celeste's bones, not because she had done anything wrong, but because they had made her feel as if she had. Then Sophie added, without irony, "You know, there's a check cashing place a block over. Might be faster for you." Celeste blinked slowly. There it is, she thought. Not even subtle now, not professional, just raw disdain, dressed up in corporate etiquette. A nearby customer, a young white woman, stopped mid-transaction to watch. Her toddler tugged at her sleeve, but she shushed him, eyes fixed on the unfolding scene. Another man, in business casual, shifted awkwardly and stepped away, pretending to check his phone. No one said a word, but everyone was watching. Celeste spoke, each word crisp. "I'd like to speak with someone who has the authority to override this nonsense. Now," Sophie smirked. "You're looking at her. I'm the supervisor. Ryan's the branch manager. There's no one else to talk to. Unless you want to call corporate," Ryan added with a shrug, clearly amused by the idea. "But they don't usually take customer calls." Celeste pulled her phone out of her purse, tapped the screen twice. "Excuse me a moment." She turned slightly away. Not enough to hide her call, but enough to reclaim her dignity. "Gabriella, this is Celeste. I need you at the downtown branch immediately." Ryan and Sophie exchanged a look. "Did she just say Gabriella?" Sophie whispered, suddenly unsure. "Probably bluffing," Ryan scoffed. They always name-drop someone when they're caught. Celeste ended the call, slipped her phone back into her bag, then looked Ryan in the eye. "You've got 7 minutes." His smile faltered. "Excuse me." "I said," she repeated evenly, "you've got 7 minutes before everything changes." Silence, all around the lobby. Time seemed to hold his breath. Security cameras watched from above. Every microaggression, every smirk, every slur wrapped in a smile recorded in crystal clarity. Sophie finally said, "You think you're somebody." Celeste smiled for the first time that morning. "I know I am." And then she waited, in complete stillness. As the countdown began, the marble floors gleamed under the fluorescent lights. Every surface of Trinity National's flagship branch seemed sterile, untouched. But beneath that polished image, the air crackled with something raw, something about to break. Celeste Morgan stood still, her purse resting gently at her side. The seconds ticked by with the steadiness of a drum. Behind her, the branch's grand wall clock kept rhythm. 10:16, 10:17, 7 minutes. Ryan McCall glanced again at the silent woman, a smirk tugging at the corner of his mouth. He leaned closer to Sophie, whispering, "She's bluffing. No one's coming." But across the city, in a sleek boardroom atop Trinity Tower, chaos had already begun. In the executive suite, Gabriella Jones had answered Celeste's call on the first ring. At first, she hadn't grasped the urgency. Celeste's voice was calm, too calm. But then, Gabriella pulled up the security feed from the downtown branch and saw her Celeste, flanked by smug-faced employees, surrounded by dismissive body language and mocking expressions. She watched it all play out in real time. Her stomach twisted. "Get me the board," Gabriella ordered. "Now." 2 floors down, in the main boardroom, quarterly projections were replaced by surveillance footage. On screen, they saw their CEO disrespected, dismissed, and profiled by her own staff. Jonathan Wexler, chairman of the board, stood frozen. "That's Celeste." Gabriella nodded grimly. "It's happening right now." The room fell silent. "No more reports," she said, her voice steely. "They're about to meet the woman they've underestimated." Back at the branch, at exactly 10:24, the sound of heavy doors bursting open echoed through the lobby like a gunshot. Every head turned. Gabriella Jones entered with purposeful strides, her tailored navy suit immaculate, heels clicking with measured power. 2 security officers flanked her. Behind them, 3 board members walked in Wexler-included faces, pale with fury. Ryan's smirk vanished. Sophie stepped back instinctively. Kelsey, the young teller, dropped her pen. Gabriella didn't speak immediately. She simply walked past the rows of stunned employees and stopped beside Celeste. Her expression shifted, stern lines softening into warmth and reverence. "Mrs. Morgan," Gabriella said clearly. "I'm so sorry." Ryan's eyebrows shot up. "Wait, Mrs. Morgan." Gabriella turned to face the staff. Her voice dropped an octave, full of unshakable weight. "This woman," she announced, "is Celeste Morgan, your CEO. The president of Trinity National." Gasps erupted. A nearby customer dropped their coffee. One woman covered her mouth, eyes wide with recognition. Sophie staggered backward, pale and wordless. Ryan opened his mouth, but nothing came out. The woman they had mocked, doubted, interrogated like a criminal, now stood at the apex of authority. And not a soul in that room could unsee what had just unfolded. Celeste remained still, her hands clasped before her. She didn't gloat. She didn't sneer. She simply stood in full ownership of her identity, her power a quiet, burning flame. Gabriella raised a tablet and began playing surveillance clips from earlier that morning. On one side of the screen, a white client withdrawing $85,000 assisted with smiles and speed. On the other, Celeste, being stalled, questioned, insulted. "We have 47 minutes of recorded footage," Gabriella continued, "documenting every biased decision, every microaggression, every word you thought wouldn't matter." Sophie whispered, "Oh my God." "You should have said that 30 minutes ago." Gabriella replied coldly. Celeste stepped forward now, her voice the calm after the storm. "I didn't come here to embarrass you," she began. "But I did come here to observe, to test if the promises we put in our mission statements meant anything on the floor." She turned to Ryan. "They don't, not here." Ryan finally found his voice. "Look, I had no idea who you were." "That's exactly the problem," Celeste interrupted. Chairman Wexler addressed the room. "This is not about a single branch," he said. "This is a reflection of a system we let rot from the inside. Today is the beginning of its correction." Celeste turned her gaze back to the staff. Her eyes locked on Ryan, Sophie, and 2 others. "You are dismissed," she said firmly. "Effective immediately." Ryan blanched. "You can't just—" "I can," Celeste said. "And I just did." Sophie looked like she might cry. "I didn't mean to." Celeste's voice remained level. "You meant every word. The cameras captured it." Security moved in. Gabriella gave a nod. The dismissed employees were escorted through the now silent lobby past customers, cameras, and colleagues who could only watch. Kelsey stood trembling behind the counter, guilt and fear mixing in her chest. Celeste approached her quietly. "I saw your discomfort. I also saw your silence." "I'm sorry," Kelsey whispered. "I didn't know what to do." "You will," Celeste said softly. "That's why I'm not firing you. But you will go through training, and you will help lead the change." Kelsey nodded through tears. What struck everyone most wasn't just what Celeste said, but what she didn't. No shouting, no outbursts, only truth, delivered with precision, a kind of strength that couldn't be faked, a kind of authority that made every person in that lobby reassess what they thought leadership looked like. One customer, an elderly Black woman, wiped a tear from her cheek and whispered, "Finally." Another, a young man in construction boots, gave a silent nod of respect. By the time the board members left the branch, Gabriella had already launched an internal review of all branches nationwide. A zero-tolerance policy on discrimination was activated, with penalties tied to real consequences, bonuses, promotions, even tenure. But here, in this branch, history had already been made, because in one morning without raising her voice, Celeste Morgan had flipped the script. She wasn't just denied service, she reclaimed it. The lobby of Trinity National's downtown branch had never been so still. The ATM machines hummed. A printer somewhere behind the glass office wall sputtered out transaction slips, but the people silent, frozen. Celeste Morgan stood at the heart of it all, still wearing her modest coat, still carrying the same scuffed leather purse. She hadn't raised her voice once, but her presence now thundered louder than any public outcry. She turned slowly toward the remaining staff, her eyes moving from face to face. Some looked away, others stared, ashamed. A few trembled under the weight of something deeper than fear, the realization that they had failed. And she had seen it all. Ryan McCall, the branch manager, had been escorted out moments earlier. Sophie was gone. 2 other employees had followed. But the ones still standing, the ones who hadn't spoken up, hadn't intervened, hadn't even flinched, were left to face what came next. Celeste didn't want revenge. She wanted reflection and then reform. Gabriella Jones stood by her side, arms crossed, watching the group with eyes that had seen this before, but never so close, never so raw. "This moment," Gabriella said, stepping forward, "will live longer than your resumes, longer than your LinkedIn titles or performance metrics. It will be remembered as the day you were tested, not on how well you followed procedure, but on how deeply you honored people." Kelsey, the young teller who had first interacted with Celeste, swallowed hard. Her voice cracked as she stepped forward. "I didn't know what to do," she said. "I knew it felt wrong. I just froze." Celeste turned to her, softening for a beat. "That's how it starts," she said gently. "The freeze, then comes the silence. And silence is where injustice thrives." Kelsey's shoulders shook. "I'm sorry." "I believe you," Celeste replied. "But belief isn't the end. It's the beginning." From the far corner, a middle-aged employee named Victor, someone Celeste hadn't noticed until now, cleared his throat. "I've been here 14 years, he said, "and I've seen things like this before. Maybe not this blatant, maybe not to the CEO." He glanced down, shame thick in his voice. "But I let it slide. I told myself it wasn't my fight. Today, I see how wrong I was." Celeste nodded. She didn't humiliate him. She didn't need to. His own words were a confession, one she accepted not with triumph, but with solemnity. "We can't fix what we don't face," she said. Then she turned to the room. Not just the employees now, but the clients, some still standing, some seated, all watching this reckoning unfold like a courtroom drama with no judge, no jury, just truth. "I didn't come here today to pull rank," she said. "I came here to listen, to witness, and to see if our values, the ones printed in brochures and carved into walls, were more than ink and stone." Her voice dropped lower, but stronger. "They weren't." Celeste walked slowly to the center of the lobby. the echo of her steps carving silence in marble. For those of you who think what happened today was about money, about a withdrawal denied, you're not paying attention. It wasn't the amount, it was the assumption, the instant leap from uncertainty to suspicion, from customer to criminal, from woman to problem. She looked directly at the security camera mounted above the entrance. And we recorded every second of it. A hush fell again. The employees knew the cameras were there, but somehow they had never felt them so present. Gabriella lifted her tablet again, holding it high. A freeze frame of Sophie rolling her eyes appeared. Next to it, another of Ryan leaning in smugly toward Celeste, lips curled in mockery. Then Sophie again, gesturing toward the street where, in her words, Celeste could find a check-cashing place more her style, each image like a punch to the ribs. Celeste stepped closer to the remaining staff. "I will not punish the quiet," she said, "but I will challenge it. If you stood by and watched this happen to anyone, me, or someone without a title, you are part of the problem, and it stops today." Kelsey lowered her gaze, waiting for the verdict. But instead of condemnation, Celeste offered something else a chance. "You showed discomfort," she said. "You didn't act, but you felt. That's more than I can say for most. So I'm giving you a choice." Kelsey looked up, stunned. "You will undergo training. You will lead by example. You will report directly to me for the next 6 months, effective immediately. You're being promoted to interim branch manager." A gasp rippled through the room. Kelsey's eyes welled. Her lips trembled. "I don't deserve this," she whispered. "No," Celeste said. "You earned this because you have something the others didn't, a conscience. And now, you'll have a platform to use it." An older woman with silver hair stepped forward from the client line. "I was here last week," she said softly. "My deposit was delayed because I didn't bring enough identification. But I did. I brought more than needed. I just didn't want to make a scene." She turned to Celeste. "Thank you for making one." Celeste offered her a small smile. "You shouldn't have to. That's the point." A younger man, wearing a maintenance uniform, added, "I've had loans denied here for reasons that never made sense. Today, I feel seen." And that, perhaps more than anything, was the lesson. To see, to hear, to act. Gabriella pulled Celeste aside as the crowd slowly began to disperse. "Legal's waiting for your review," she said. "The board is behind you." And the press already caught wind of something happening downtown. "Let them," Celeste said. "The public should see the cost of unchecked culture." Later that day, Gabriella would initiate an emergency overhaul of Trinity's policies, a new equity oversight committee, disaggregated performance reviews, mystery audits at every branch, bonuses tied to customer experience data, not just profit, but this lobby, this moment was where it all began. As Celeste left the branch, Gabriella turned and looked back at the staff, some shaken, some silently transformed. In her wake, Celeste didn't just leave justice, she left a mirror and the courage for others to finally look into it. The sun was setting behind the high rises of the city when Celeste Morgan stepped into her quiet office on the 41st floor of Trinity Tower. The events of the day still echoed in her bones, not because she had revealed her title, not because she had fired 3 employees in full view of customers and staff, But because the system she had believed she was rebuilding from within had cracked wide open before her very eyes. Celeste stood at the window, looking down at the streets below. Somewhere out there, a new day for Trinity Financial was beginning, not with slogans or press statements, but with discomfort, confrontation, and truth. The kind of truth that hurts before it heals. Kelsey stood alone inside the now quiet branch lobby, long after the last customer had gone. The overhead lights buzzed softly. Her hands trembled slightly as she gathered her belongings, processing the whirlwind of a promotion she never asked for, never imagined, and in her heart never felt worthy of. She had frozen when it counted most. She had looked away, and yet Celeste Morgan had seen something in her that she herself hadn't seen the seed of change. Kelsey opened the drawer where Sophie used to keep her notes. Inside was a neatly organized stack of forms, checklists, and outdated training manuals. But what caught Kelsey's eye was a yellow sticky note with a scribbled phrase in bold, sharp handwriting. Perception is control. Stay ahead of it. It made her sick to her stomach. That had been the entire problem, hadn't it? Everything was about appearance over principle, about managing optics, not nurturing ethics. Not anymore. A mandatory all-branch leadership summit was convened faster than any meeting in the company's history. Executives, managers, and staff packed into Trinity's state-of-the-art learning center. Celeste stood at the front of the auditorium. No podium, no teleprompter, just her, a wireless mic clipped to her collar, and a slideshow that bore only one title: What Happens When No One's Watching. She spoke not as CEO, but as witness, as customer, as Black woman. I didn't walk into that branch looking for a confrontation, she said. I walked in looking for a culture we promised but never enforced. Her words sliced through silence. I saw who we really are, not in reports, not in metrics, but in glances, in tones, in who got served first and who got stalled. She didn't name names, didn't need to. Instead, she asked a question that sat with the room like smoke. If I hadn't revealed who I was, how would that story have ended? A few heads bowed. Some shifted uncomfortably. Others stared forward, finally seeing their own complicity. Then she clicked to the next slide, a split screen. On one side, a smiling white customer, receiving fast service. On the other, a Hispanic grandmother holding an ID and waiting 40 minutes. The contrast was undeniable. It always had been. After the summit, Celeste didn't return to her office. She joined a circle of mid-level managers for breakout sessions. She sat next to people who had avoided her gaze before, people who now leaned in to listen. One of them, Amir, a branch leader from Denver, spoke up. I think I've looked the other way too many times, he said quietly. I convinced myself we were just being cautious, but now I realize we were being selective. Celeste nodded. Caution without equity becomes discrimination. That's where we've been, but that's not where we're staying. Another manager, Linda, a veteran of 22 years, raised her hand. I want to change, she said, voice cracking, but I don't know where to start. You just did, Celeste replied. In the weeks that followed, Celeste and Gabriella led an aggressive reform plan known as the Equity Initiative Framework, or EIF. Every employee from teller to regional vice president underwent immersive training rooted in lived experience, not abstract theory. Role plays were redesigned, metrics rebalanced, Bonus structures reimagined to reward ethical service, not just financial growth. Mystery shoppers were sent to branches with varying demographics. Their reports went directly to Celeste's desk, but it wasn't just about discipline anymore. It was about direction. Celeste made it clear this wasn't a cleanup. It was a cultural realignment. Each branch created their own equity pledge, boards visual, public, and updated monthly. And at the bottom of every pledge poster, if you witness or experience service that does not reflect these values, call this number, Celeste Morgan's direct line. One afternoon, Celeste received a letter, handwritten, no return address. Inside was a simple note. You don't know me. I'm one of the ones who laughed. I watched you stand there and did nothing. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I just want you to know. That moment changed me. I now understand who I've been, and I'm working every day not to be her again. There was no signature. Celeste read the letter twice, then folded it gently and placed it in a drawer labeled Truth. Celeste refused to turn her leadership into a symbol of fear. Instead, she championed the power of individual transformation. She believed people could grow if they were held accountable and given the tools to rebuild. She even reached out to Kelsey privately, months into her new role as interim branch manager. How are you holding up? She asked. Kelsey looked nervous. Some days I feel like I don't deserve to be here. Celeste smiled gently. And yet, here you are. That's the work. She didn't say you've proven yourself. She said you're becoming. 6 months after the incident, Trinity Financial was profiled in a national piece titled From Prejudice to Policy, the bank that chose to change. But for Celeste, legacy wasn't about headlines. It was about quiet shifts. Side glances no longer filled with suspicion. Service desks where everyone waited the same, regardless of what they wore or how they spoke. It was about walking into her branches dressed in a hoodie, jeans, no title, and being greeted not with doubt, but with dignity. Redemption, she had learned, didn't always come loudly. Sometimes it walked in quietly and stayed. The morning air was crisp when Celeste Morgan stepped through the doors of Trinity National's downtown branch once again. But this time, she wasn't here to test the system or to confront injustice. There were no security teams flanking her, no board members trailing behind, no cameras catching her entrance. Just her, dressed in a gray sweater, dark jeans, and comfortable flats. Celeste looked nothing like the woman whose name now appeared in headlines, case studies, and corporate seminars across the nation. And yet, this was exactly who she had always been, the woman beneath the title, the woman who believed in systems, not symbols. It had been 6 months since that unforgettable day, the day the bank was humbled by its own reflection, the day the mask slipped. Today, she had come for closure, not just for the staff, but for herself. The branch looked different now, not physically, but spiritually. There was a new rhythm to the room, a warmth that had been absent before. Customers of all backgrounds were seated comfortably in the lounge area, sipping complimentary coffee. A diverse team of tellers assisted them, not with performative politeness, but with presence, with care. At the service desk, a white woman helped an elderly black man set up an online account. No raised eyebrows, no delayed questions, just guidance. Celeste observed quietly from the side. She smiled. Her mission hadn't been to create perfection. That was impossible. Her mission had been to create awareness, and from awareness, transformation. Behind the counter stood Kelsey, the young teller who had once hesitated, frozen in the face of injustice. Now, she wore a name tag that read Kelsey Grant, branch manager. She didn't see Celeste at first. She was too focused, too present, smiling gently as she coached a teenage customer through setting up a savings account. Her voice carried calm, assurance, and a note of pride that came not from rank, but from redemption earned the hard way. When she finally looked up and saw Celeste, her breath caught. Celeste nodded softly, no words yet, just acknowledgement. After finishing her task, Kelsey walked around the counter and met Celeste near the wall, where a new poster hung. It read, "Everyone deserves respect, every time. If your experience falls short of this, call our CEO directly." Celeste looked at the sign, then back at Kelsey. "You made that your mission, didn't you?" she asked. Kelsey nodded. "Every morning before the doors open." There was no apology this time, no lingering guilt, only a shared understanding. Growth had happened, quietly, consistently. They sat together in the back lounge area. No need for privacy, it was no longer a secret meeting. "How's the team?" Celeste asked. Kelsey exhaled. "We lost some. Others transferred. But the ones who stayed, they're different now. We talk more. We check each other. We even built a peer support group." Celeste nodded, impressed. "That's what leadership looks like. You're not just running a branch, you're restoring trust." Kelsey looked down. "You trusted me before I even trusted myself." "Why?" "Because you paused," Celeste said. "In that moment, you knew something was wrong. Most people don't even feel that." Kelsey blinked away a tear. "You gave me a future I thought I ruined." Celeste offered a kind smile. "I gave you an opportunity. You built the future." Celeste quietly submitted her plan for a 6-month sabbatical. It wasn't a resignation. It was a step back, a space to breathe after years of pushing forward. The board supported her decision unanimously. Gabriella would act as interim CEO. There were no headlines about it, no press conference, just an internal memo, signed in her signature blue ink. True leadership is not about staying on the pedestal. It's about building a world where the pedestal isn't needed. She didn't need applause. She needed impact that lasted without her presence. On her final day before leave, Celeste visited 5 branches in one afternoon. She didn't announce her visits. She didn't bring her security detail. At each one, she sat for 15 minutes, watched, listened. What she saw moved her more than any award or recognition ever could. In Atlanta, a transgender customer was greeted with authentic warmth and offered financial planning support with zero hesitation. In Detroit, a Spanish-speaking woman was paired with a bilingual teller without being made to wait. In Sacramento, a disabled veteran had his loan documents explained slowly, carefully, with empathy instead of impatience. And in every branch, on every wall, hung the same message: respect is not a courtesy, it is a promise. Celeste removed the framed portrait of the bank's founders from the wall behind her desk and replaced it with something new, a photo taken during the Equity Initiative's launch. It showed 5 people, former customers, who had once been denied service, now sitting at the table as part of Trinity's Client Equity Advisory Board. Smiling, whole, seen. Beneath it was engraved, "Voices once silenced now shape our future." As she packed up her personal items, Gabriella walked in carrying a small box. One last thing, she said, smiling. From the staff. Inside the box was a single key, gold-plated. On the back, it read, "Thank you for unlocking what we couldn't face." Celeste closed her eyes for a moment. She wasn't leaving a company. She was leaving a legacy. As Celeste walked through the glass doors one final time, at least for a while, the breeze caught the edge of her coat. She didn't look back. She didn't need to, because in every conversation now spoken, in every pause that turns into action, in every worker who finally sees, she would still be there, not in title, but in truth. Not every revolution begins with a raised fist. Some begin with a withdrawal slip and the refusal to be dismissed. Celeste Morgan didn't walk into Trinity National's downtown branch to prove a point. She walked in to see who they really were when no one was watching. She walked in not as a CEO, but as a customer, a black woman, dressed plainly, requesting access to her own money. And what she encountered was not a policy issue, it was a mirror. What stared back at her was a reflection of the unspoken hierarchy, one shaped by skin tone, clothing, accents, assumptions. One where value was assigned before names were even spoken. But the real story isn't just about the fall of a few bad employees. It's about the rise of a new standard. A quiet but unwavering demand for integrity over appearances. Celeste didn't scream. She didn't threaten. She simply stood her ground, called for accountability, and let the truth do what it always does, reveal. In her calm, there was power. In her silence, there was strategy. And in her actions, there was a reminder. Dignity is not something granted by uniform or salary. It is inherent, and denying it comes at a cost. Because sooner or later, the one you underestimate may be the one holding the keys to your future. In today's world, how we treat people when we think they hold no power says everything about who we truly are. The story of Celeste Morgan reminds us that assumptions based on appearance, race, or social status can blind us to the truth standing right in front of us. We often rush to judge, to categorize, to gatekeep. But real leadership, real integrity, is revealed in the quiet moments when no one's watching, and when treating someone with dignity is a choice, not an obligation. What happened in that bank isn't just a corporate scandal. It's a mirror reflecting everyday moments we've all seen, or lived moments of being overlooked, second-guessed, or dismissed for not looking the part. But Celeste didn't respond with outrage. She responded with clarity, courage, and grace. And in doing so, she didn't just correct injustice, she transformed the system that allowed it to exist. In life, you never know who's watching, who's walking in, or who you're talking to. So let your actions reflect your values always. Because the world doesn't just need louder voices, it needs better listeners, stronger hearts, and people brave enough to do the right thing, even when it's inconvenient.